Alrighty, welcome back. We just talked about some teams that won the combine, some teams that gained some much needed recruiting pitch help during this weekend. But now it's time to get into some position coaches, some guys that you might not know the name of, but you will very shortly because they are working up the ranks to be a head coach, or they came down from a head coach to be a position coach at a school. So tons of guys to get to. Let's start with a guy that just took his job about a week ago, Josh Crawford, the new running back coach at UGA. He is replacing someone that is not easy to replace. Del McGee is one of the best running back coaches and coaches in the entire country. Did an incredible amount of things at UGA and had a litany of remarkable running backs to show his ability. But Josh Crawford comes in with a lot of energy. An elite recruiter coming from Georgia Tech, did a ton of really good things in his couple of years there. But I think the biggest thing about him is he coached in high school in Georgia for about a decade. Coached at a ton of really, really good programs. Colquitt County, a very, very talented program, just about 40 miles north of me. That is always in the conversation. He coached there for a time. So tons of relationships across the entire state. Everyone knows who he is. Everyone respects him for jumping up the ranks and obviously being at a program like UGA now. So when UGA goes out on these recruiting visits, whether it's a running back or a wide receiver or a quarterback, pretty much I think priority recruits will be getting to see Josh Crawford very, very consistently because he is someone that can obviously make relationships very quickly. And I think good news for him is he has one of the best running back duos he could ask for in Trevor Etienne and Branson Robinson. Etienne we'll get into a little bit more later, but plenty of guys to pick from, plenty of great athletes, and obviously that offensive line is going to be solid under Stacy Searles, so I don't think there's any worry about that. So Josh Crawford is walking into a tough situation, taking over for Del McGee, no two ways about that, but definitely an advantageous one to live up to the hype, as it were. So very excited to see what he can do. I think he's going to be a quick riser in this industry. And then a guy that kind of took an interesting path to get to the position he is now, Maurice Lindquist, the DB coach at Bama. He took over for Travarius Robinson, who found his way to UGA as the defensive coordinator. And that is a tough task. Just like Del McGee, Travarius Robinson has cultivated an immense amount of respect for the development that he can pull off, the recruiting ability, the ability to create a connection with his players, all these things that are just remarkable that he did. And Maurice Lindquist has got to live up to that, which is not easy. He has a number of guys that have left in the portal that he probably didn't even get to meet before they left in the portal. So there will be some relying on younger guys. Jalen Makuba, Xavier Mincy, both those guys will have to be ready to roll, and Lindquist will be a big part of that equation if they are ready to roll. And then adding Keon Saab from Michigan is huge. It gives a little bit of stability to a room that had been a little bit shaky to start the off season. A little bit of worry, I'm sure, around Tuscaloosa about that, and it feels like they have the guys. It's just putting them in position to win at this point. So Lindquist is going to be very important to do that, and coming from a head coaching position at Buffalo, where that secondary, I watched it a ton because it was one of the teams I covered while doing some scouting for a sports data company, but they had a really good back end. Tons of guys that played really well. A guy that I love, Devin Grant, that's used. And a lot of that is Lindquist. He's very, very talented. So it'll be very interesting to see how all that takes shape, because if it doesn't take shape the way Alabama fans want, it could be a little bit of tough time for Maurice Lindquist in Tuscaloosa. But let's move on to another guy that is filling shoes that I would not want to be in his position. I'll put it that way. Kenny Baker, the new D-line coach at Texas. This is the business, right? Every now and then you'll have to take over for some of the best guys in the game because they move up. There was, I'm sure Glenn Schumann, when he was taking over for Dan Lanning, there were a lot of people doubting him because of how good Dan Lanning is. And can you match that energy? There is a big question mark there. But Kenny Baker taking over for Bo Davis is about as tough as it gets, I'll be honest. As you all remember, I'm sure, the remarkable, infamous rant that he had after the Iowa State game in Steve Sarkisian, his first year at Texas. Every Texas fan, including myself, will tell you that was the turning point. That was the moment that everyone realized this isn't going to be another Tom Herman or Charles Strong era because the people around the head coach are this guy. So a ton of respect for Bo Davis. I mean, one of the best developers, excuse me, I lost it, but one of the best developers, one of the best recruiters, one of the best people in that program over the last couple of years for Sark's tenure. And going back to LSU, his alma mater, can't blame a dude for that by any means. But Kenny Baker walking into a situation that's a little bit precarious as well, kind of Maurice Lindquist type setup where no Tavondre Sweat, no Byron Murphy, a lot of guys that have the chance to make that jump. Jere Bledsoe has made huge jumps in offseason, it seems. Alfred Collins is a personal favorite of mine that I think will take a big step forward, and I think Kenny Baker's an interesting hire for a number of reasons, but namely, he comes from the NFL. He was the assistant D-line coach in the at the Dolphins this past year, and a very popular guy around there. Mike McDaniel, excuse me, spoke very, very highly of him, along with pretty much everyone else in that franchise. So, someone that I think Texas fans are very excited about, but at the end of the day, a ton of work to do, because if the interior defensive line for Texas is not solid, if it's a little bit porous at times, it could be a very long year for their first year in the SEC. But another D-line coach that has been around for a while at his school, but finally has a chance to have the most disruptive group he's had in a really, really long time. Randall Joyner, the line coach at Ole Miss, huge transfer portal class. Obviously, adding Walter Nolan is huge. Another guy we will get to later. There's so many incredible players that he picked up, whether it's edge guys or interior guys. They have Sunshine Perkins as a edge rusher out there. So tons to work with. There's no two ways about that. But at the end of the day, when you bring in a big transfer portal class, there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of putting guys together. There are a lot of working out rotations and where guys fit into the puzzle, and it doesn't always work out smoothly. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles all the different transfer portal guys that he brought in, all the different moving parts, and take advantage of this year, because at the end of the day, this seems to be the year for Ole Miss. There is so much talk about how good the offense is going to be, how good Jackson Dart is going to be, but the defense is where their season is going to be decided. There's no two about that. And they've done a great job bringing guys in the transfer portal, but putting it together falls on the position coaches. So for Randall Joyner and his group of position coaches on the defensive side of the ball to get into order, I think it does help a lot having the back end of this defense be more solid than it has been in the past. Adding Trey Amos from Alabama is absolutely huge. Was a great guy for them late on in last season. So I think it does help this D-line kind of attack the quarterback, which is what a lot of these guys do incredibly well. So very excited to see what he can do. Tons of guys to look forward to, but if they can't put together, as we know, your defensive line and defensive line play overall is what wins in the SEC. So he has a ton on his shoulders. And then finally, let's jump back to the offensive side of the ball. Joey Halsell, the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at Tennessee, one of the most interesting guys in the entire country, I think all of us agree, is Nico Iamaleava. He is a guy that absolutely has every chance, has all the potential in the world, will be put in situations where he'll be on full display. And he really had a very, very solid bowl game against Iowa, but at the end of the day, it's something of a Joe Milton effect where he has a really good bowl game against Clemson, and then things don't go so well next year. So you want to avoid that as much as you can. But Halsell has been the quarterback coach for some time now, so he was around when Hendon Hooker had an incredible year a couple of years ago, and probably should have been in New York if you ask me, but that's none of my business. I think now that he's the play caller, it's all on him, right? The earnest of this offense is entirely on him. Obviously, having Josh Heupel to help and to assist is incredibly important, but there's a lot on him, and you have to make things easy for Nico because he's still a young guy, and he's going to go through those growing pains just like anyone else. So it'll be a big task for him to put him in winning situations, but he'll have plenty to work with to do that. Squirrel White, Chaz Nimrod, and Brew McCoy, all back this year, all super important to this team, can do a ton of really good things. And you got to figure out that run game after Jalen Wright walked out the door, but still tons to like about this team and a ton to work with for Joey Halsell and company. So I'm very excited to see what he can do. He will be a very important person if Tennessee is going to make a run in the SEC like a lot of people think they can do, much like Ole Miss. So tons of guys to look forward to. That is not an exhaustive list by any means. Tons of behind-the-scene unsung heroes in the SEC that make it go. So we will definitely come back to that segment. I think we'll bounce around to different conferences as we do, and then work back around because there are tons of guys that did not get recognition here that absolutely deserve it. But we're going to take our final break here, and when we come back, it's all about transfer portal acquisition. We're going to talk about the top 10 impact transfers going into 2024. Tons of really talented guys were on the move, so it was a hard list together, but I think I got a solid top 5 going. But stick with us, and we will be right back.